Close your eyes for a second and picture your happiest childhood memory. A birthday, a holiday, a face you loved. You can see it, can't you? The colors, the feeling, the details. Now, what if I told you that memory might never have happened? Not the way you remember it. Maybe not at all. That is not a trick. It is one of the most unsettling truths that science has ever uncovered about the human mind. And by the end of this video, you may never trust your own memories in quite the same way again. Let me prove it to you. Right now. Think about the Monopoly man, the little rich mascot with the top hat and the mustache. Picture his face. Most people are completely certain he wears a monocle over one eye. He does not. He never has. Look it up later, and you will feel a strange little jolt, because your memory is showing you something that was never real. Or the beloved children's books, the Berenstain Bears. Millions of people remember it spelled Berenstein, Berenstain. But it was always Berenstain. Always. This shared feeling of remembering something that never happened is so common it has a name. It is called the Mandela Effect. The term was coined by a researcher named Fiona Broome, who discovered that huge numbers of people vividly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. They remembered the news coverage, the funeral, except it never happened. Mandela walked free, became president, and lived until 2013. So how can so many people all over the world remember the same thing that simply is not true? The answer forces us to rethink what a memory even is. We like to imagine that memory works like a video camera, that somewhere in your brain there's a recording of your life, and remembering just means pressing play. Clean, accurate, permanent. But that is not how it works at all. Back in the 1930s, a psychologist named Frederic Bartlett ran a now famous experiment. He had people read an unusual folk story, then ask them to recall it later, again and again over weeks and months. And something strange happened. With every retelling, the story changed. People smoothed out the parts that felt odd. They added details that were never there. They quietly rewrote the tale to make more sense to them, without ever realizing they were doing it. Bartlett realized something profound. Memory is not a recording that we replay. It is a story that we rebuild, from scratch, every single time we remember it. Think about what that means. Your memory is not a photograph sitting safely in a drawer. It is more like a painting that you repaint from memory each time you look at it. And every time you repaint it, tiny details shift. A color here, a word there, until, years later, you may be looking at something quite different from what actually happened. And here is the part that should really make you pause. The more often you revisit a memory, the more chances you have had to change it. Which means your most precious, most replayed memories, the ones you have told 100 times, may be the least accurate of all. But it gets stranger still. Because it turns out your memories are not just fragile. They can be planted. In the 1990s, a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus set out to test something almost unbelievable. Could you make someone remember an entire event that never happened to them? In one famous study, she and her team told adult participants a few short stories about their own childhoods, supposedly gathered from their families. Most of the stories were true, but one was completely invented. A story about the person getting lost in a shopping mall as a young child, frightened and crying, before being rescued by a kind stranger. None of it had ever happened, and yet when asked to recall it, around a quarter of the participants did. They remembered being lost. Some described the fear, the stranger, details no one had ever given them. Their minds had taken a simple suggestion and grown it into a full, vivid memory, complete with emotions of an event that never took place. Loftus spent decades showing just how easily this happens. In another classic study, she showed people a video of a car accident. Then, she asked them how fast the cars were going. But she changed one single word. To some people, she said the cars hit each other. To others, she said they smashed into each other. Just that one word, smashed, made people remember the cars going faster. And a week later, those same people were more likely to remember seeing broken glass at the scene. There was no broken glass. One word had rewritten what they saw with their own eyes. This is why eyewitness testimony, once trusted completely in courtrooms, has been responsible for putting innocent people in prison. People who were absolutely certain of what they saw. And absolutely wrong, not because they were lying, but because a confident memory can feel exactly as real whether it is true or not. So let us go back to your happy childhood memory, the one you pictured at the start. How much of it is truly yours? How much did you build from an old photograph you saw years later? From a story a parent told you so many times that it became your memory, even though you were far too young to actually remember it? How many of the details did your mind quietly invent to fill in the gaps, the way it always does? You have no way of knowing. And neither do I. That is the vertigo of it. The memories that feel the most real, the ones that make you who you are, come with no label telling you which parts actually happened. Now, this might sound frightening. If I cannot trust my own memories, then what can I trust? If my past is partly fiction, then who am I really? But wait, because there's another way to see this, and I think it is beautiful. If your memory is not a recording, but a story you tell, then you are not just a passive viewer of your own past. You are its author. Every time you remember someone you loved, you are not pressing play on a dusty tape. You are bringing them back to life, actively, lovingly in the theater of your own mind. And each time, you get to choose how that story is told. You can choose to remember the warmth instead of the argument, the laughter instead of the ending. Not by lying to yourself, but simply by deciding which threads of a rich and messy past you hold onto and repaint and carry forward. Your memory being imperfect is not a flaw in the machine. It may be the most human thing about you. It is the reason a departed loved one can still make you smile. The reason an old song can still fill your chest with a feeling from 20 years ago. You are not a hard drive storing files. You are a storyteller, keeping the people and moments that mattered alive in the only place they can still exist. So the next time a memory washes over you, warm and vivid and certain, you do not have to ask whether every detail is true. Maybe that was never the point, because the memory was never really a record of what happened. It was always a story about what mattered, and that story is yours to keep telling.